This video is sponsored by Bug Baffler. Oh, hello. Give me 1 second, I'll be right with you. So you're ready to dive into the world of beekeeping, but you don't know where to begin. Well, keeping bees might be a lot easier than you think. Honeybees are very reliable. They can collect their own food, get their own water, and provide their own shelter. It's their world and you're just living in it. This is the premier guide to getting started in beekeeping. Good afternoon, beekeepers and bee enthusiasts. How are you doing? It's another great day at the farm. And we're hanging out. It's February now. It's actually kind of warm out today. It's going to be in the low 60s. The sun is out. It's a nice day. We're doing good. We hope you and yours are doing good as well. And we've got an excellent video planned for you today. And of course, today we're talking about the premier guide to getting started in beekeeping. Now, there are thousands of books out there regarding beekeeping, and there's tens of thousands of YouTube videos and tens of thousands of YouTubers, and a lot of people telling you got to do 1,000 different things to get started in beekeeping, that it's super difficult, and you got to jump through 10 flaming hoops and do somersaults, and you got to be dictating the lives of those bees every day, and you just got to be doing so much. But we're here to tell you that beekeeping can be very easy. It can be very easy if done sustainably. Beekeeping is a very rewarding thing. And what a lot of people don't realize is that honeybees are very reliable on their own. And like I said earlier, they can provide their own shelter, they can provide their own food, they can provide their own water. They can take care of themselves for the most part. You know, maybe as beekeepers, we need to do a few things, but it definitely doesn't require a ton of strenuous work. It can actually be very easy and very rewarding. And today we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what you need to get started in keeping bees. So if you're looking to keep bees, this is the guide you need to check out. This will get you started. We know you're going to enjoy it. Without further ado, let's break right into it. So step 1 to our premier guide is pursuing sound knowledge. So you need to take some time a little bit to do a little bit of reading and to kind of just get a little bit of knowledge about honeybees and how they function, and just to get a little bit of a mindset of what you're kind of getting into. Now, there's a million different beekeeping books out there, and there's lots of stuff you can go over, but like I said, a lot of that information, it kind of falls flat because it's telling you that you need to do all kinds of different steps that in the end aren't really necessary, and that bees can, you know, they require a bunch of human interaction and a lot of stuff like that. And that's the stuff you want to look out for. But what I want you to really check out, the kind of books that you really need to look at, are some of these books that I have here. Now, these are some of my favorite books in the beekeeping world, and this is stuff I've really come to enjoy. And I'll just go ahead and talk about these books right now. So first off, Keeping Bees with a Smile. This is, as most of our subscribers know, this is my favorite book. You know, I've talked about this book a million different times before. It is an excellent read on sustainable beekeeping, and it will get you started and basically give you all the tips and tricks you need to be a good beekeeper. Now, if there was one book I would tell that I had to choose to tell you to get that you need to read, it would be this book right here, Keeping Bees with a Smile. It has just about everything you need in it, and we've based all of our beekeeping off of this book for the most part. We love the author. We've really researched it a bunch. And yeah, it's just got all kinds of good stuff. It kind of goes into talking about what I've said before about how a lot of the literature out there, you know, it doesn't get you on the right track for beekeeping, and that, you know, whereas a lot of people would tell you you need to be working your bees all the time, this is telling you that, hey, you can have a hands-off approach and you can be successful, and it can definitely work for you. So Keeping Bees with a Smile, huge book. I would highly recommend this book if you're getting started in beekeeping, and it will get you on the right track. Now, our next book, Keeping Bees in Horizontal Hives, this is from Georges de Landes. And Landes, if you didn't know, he basically came up with the hive system that we use to this day. We use the Landes hive, and basically he was a big guy when it came to using horizontal hives. And when he invented the Landes hive, it changed a lot of things. And you know, the Landes hive isn't the most popular hive out there. That would be the Langstroth hive. But the Landes hive is a very good hive out there. It is a horizontal hive. And if you don't know what a horizontal hive is, a horizontal hive, whereas a Langstroth hive is expanded vertically and you stack boxes on top of each other like you've seen, a horizontal hive, you expand it horizontally, and you've basically got the whole hive, and you basically add frames on the inside and you make the hive bigger horizontally. So that's what a horizontal hive is. And in this book, Landes talks all about it. He basically says, hey, you know, this is a good hive system for honeybees, and it's a good read. So yeah, we would definitely recommend this book. Now, my next book, and I really like this book. This is Honeybee Democracy, and this is by Thomas Seeley. And in this book, he basically goes into the inner workings of how swarms function. And if you don't know what a honeybee swarm is, a honeybee swarm is how a colony of honeybees reproduces on a colony level. So basically the colony will split and a swarm will go and search for a new home out in the environment somewhere. And it's kind of crazy because all the bees have to stick together somehow, and they basically go in the same direction, and they basically come to a consensus about their new home and how they're going to find it. And this book goes into how they do that, and it's a wonderful book. I really do enjoy it. And yeah, Seeley's got a good book here. He's also got The Lives of Bees, which I don't have on me right now, but that's also a good book. So definitely a good read, and you should check it out. And then the last book that I really enjoy is The Being. And The Being, it's got all kinds of great stuff in it. It's got wonderful pictures and just some really good photography of honeybees and how they work. And it's excellent. This is an excellent book. I really do enjoy it. And it's mostly just pictures for the most part. They do talk about bees in it as well, but it's also, for the most part, just pictures and stuff. But it is an excellent book on photography. And, you know, it is a really good read, and I would highly recommend this as well. So these are all good books. I enjoyed these 4 books. And then, like I said, I also like The Lives of Bees by Thomas Seeley, which kind of talks about how colonies work and function. And so these are all good reads. And I would highly recommend these books if you're getting started in beekeeping. They will get you on the right track, and you're going to really appreciate them. And it'll give you an understanding of how bees work. So you'll be on the right track whenever you are starting to keep your bees and you're starting to handle them. Now, what I would tell you is for all the knowledge out there like this, there's 10 times as much knowledge that is basically telling you that you need to do a million different steps in beekeeping. You need to be dictating the lives of your bees. You need to be handling them all the time, disturbing them. And you need to just really be getting in their face all the time. And I would tell you to stay away from that information. A lot of that stuff it's very useless. They will generally promote a lot of tools and gadgets and treatments and medications and all kinds of different things. And they will tell you it's stuff you need for your honeybees, but in the end, it's stuff you don't need. You don't need a bunch of bells and whistles to be successful. We're about to talk about the stuff that you do need, but you don't need to overcomplicate beekeeping. And so anytime you're reading a book about bees or you're watching a video and they're telling you that you need to do a million different steps and that you need to do a million different things, and that the beekeeping it takes a lot of work and it's just strenuous and all that stuff, I would tell you to stay away from that information. I would absolutely tell you to stay away from that information. Don't waste your time with that stuff. Get you some good reading material like this. And of course, you know, we've got really wonderful YouTube videos as well. We've covered our beekeeping experience for the past 5 years with natural beekeeping. So if you're curious about it, I would tell you to go check out our recent videos, get you a good book, and that'll help you along the way. Okay, so the second step in our premier guide is the right tools to be successful. Now, I've got all kinds of cool things around me, and I'm just going to basically go through and kind of talk about them. What we're going to go over today is the essential things you need to be successful. Now, there's a million different things for keeping bees out there. There's all kinds of different gadgets and tools and utensils and all kinds of different crazy things. But I just want to share with you the essential things you need to be a beekeeper, okay? This is just the stuff that you should absolutely have and stuff that you really want to look for whenever you're getting started. So let's get right into it. So of course, the first thing we got to talk about is the bee suit. Now, a bee suit is recommended. I would highly recommend you get some sort of bee suit, because keeping bees, while some bees can be kind of mild and they might not bother you as much, there are times when you can get into a hot hive and those bees can really come after you. And if that happens, you're going to wish you had a suit on. And of course, I've got a really nice suit on right here. And of course, this is the bug baffler suit. And if you don't know what a bug baffler suit is, it is a lightweight suit that you don't even realize you're wearing it. It's nice and cool. It keeps you nice and fresh, and the air circulates really well. It's got a nice hood that comes over, and you can zip it up. And if you've seen me in any of our beekeeping videos, I've always got this suit on. You know, it definitely keeps me safe from any kind of stings or anything like that. But this is a really good suit. And the really nice thing about these suits is it's made right here in the United States, over in New Hampshire. You can get them, you can get the suits just like these, or you can get white suits. There's all kinds of different products they have on their website. You need to go to bugbaffler.com and check out all their cool products. This is a really good suit. I would highly recommend it. And if you go to their site and use discount code SecureAcres5 in the checkout area, you can get 5% off on any of their suits. So go to their website, use SecureAcres5 in their discounts code section, and you'll get a 5% discount on any of their stuff, and you're really going to enjoy it. And I love this suit, and I would just highly recommend it to anybody. I don't like big white suits because they will make you sweat like crazy. I mean, those, if it gets hot where you're at, those big white suits that you see people wearing, it'll make you sweat. And I like to have something that circulates really well. And this suit, like I said, you don't even realize you're wearing it. So it's a really nice suit, and I would highly recommend it. But one big thing you need to have when you're keeping bees is a nice suit. So get you a nice suit and you'll be happy. Now, what other things do we have? Of course, let's talk about this. We have our smoker. Now, a smoker is essential. You need to have a smoker. What a smoker does is it masks the warning pheromone that bees give off when there's an intruder. So all bees, if there's an intruder in their hive, they give off this pheromone that basically warns other bees, like, hey, we need to get jumpy because there's someone coming and there's somebody in the hive. And so what the smoker does is it masks that pheromone. And if the bees get really hot around you, you can smoke yourself with a smoker, and it'll usually calm them down and they'll be really good. So I would highly recommend you get you a smoker, and make sure you get you some good smoker fuel as well, something that you can actually burn for a long time on the inside of the smoker, and you'll be very happy with that. Another thing, well, two things we have is, of course, our bee brush. Now, I probably need to get another bee brush, but this bee brush is nice. And bee brushes are nice because it allows you to kind of sweep the bees off the frames as you're working your bees. If you got bees that are just sitting on frames or anything like that and you need to kind of move them, the bee brush really helps. It's a very gentle brush, and it can kind of get them off, and it's a really good tool. So I would highly recommend you get you a bee brush, and you'll be very happy with that. Another great thing we got to talk about is, of course, the hive tool. Now, a hive tool is essential. You really want a hive tool. A hive tool, basically, whenever you go into your hive, honeybees will seal the cracks between the frames and everything with what's called propolis. If you don't know what propolis is, it is tree resin that they collect out in nature. And basically they use it to seal all the cracks on the inside of their hive. So when you go to open your hive, it's going to be hard to pry open those frames, which is why you need a hive tool. So get you a good hive tool that you can pry open the frames, and you'll be a lot happier for it. Trust me, you want to have one of these. This is essential. You need to get you a hive tool. So that's all the basic tools. One thing I do want to talk about is get you a nice pair of gloves. Now I use latex gloves, and I use them with my bug baffler suit, and the latex gloves are nice. They work pretty well. I've only had one incident where the bees kind of stung through it, but they were really hot, and I wasn't using a smoker at the time, so that was kind of a, you know, it was a rare phenomenon. But I use latex gloves. But if you don't want to use latex, if you want to use something a little thicker, then get you some thicker gloves and something to kind of hide your hands. But one thing I do like about the latex gloves is it makes handling frames a lot easier if you're using latex gloves versus if you're using really thick gloves, then handling the frames can be more difficult. So get you a nice pair of gloves to wear and you'll be happy with that. Now, so that's all the basic tools we're going to talk about. So let's talk about, of course, what we need to keep the bees. Now we need a hive system. And this is a hive system right here. Now if you don't know, this is a Lands hive. And a Lands hive, as I said earlier, is a horizontal hive. Now, whereas a Langstroth hive, you stack boxes on top of each other when you're expanding the hive, a Lands horizontal hive is expanded horizontally. And it's all done on the inside of the hive. So basically we have the inside, and you know, you got your frames and everything, and these are the frames right here, or these are one of the frames. And basically you will put 7 of these frames on the inside for basically wintering the hive. So 7 frames on the inside of the hive, they'll basically sit here, and 7 frames will cover about this distance. Now in the springtime, whenever you are adding frames for them to build honey on, you will basically add frames for the remainder of the hive, and you'll put them in there. And that is what a horizontal hive is. It is expanded horizontally. So there's nothing added to the side of this hive. Basically, it is all expanded on the inside of the hive, and it goes from expanding them from the midpoint all the way over, and that's basically how it works. So you want to get you a good hive system. Now, one thing I do like about the horizontal hive that I don't really like about the Langstroth hive is the Langstroth hive, which is what most people use in the United States. The Langstroth hive, it is stacked one on top of each other. So basically you've got a bunch of stacked boxes one on top of each other, and if you want to get to the bottom tier of the bees to do an inspection or anything like that, you have to remove every single one of those boxes to get to the bottom tier. Now a horizontal hive, you saw I just took the lid off, and basically I have access to the whole hive right away. I don't need to, you know, remove boxes on top of each other or anything like that. I basically have access to the whole hive right from the front. So horizontal hives are very nice. I really enjoy these hives. I think they're easier than handling Langstroth hives. I think the only thing that's a little bit more difficult than a Langstroth hive is like getting them to their permanent location, because these are heavy. But once you get them to their permanent location, they're pretty good to go, and you don't have to worry about them, and it really is hardly any work after that. So I would recommend a Lands horizontal hive. If you don't want to get that, then get you a Langstroth hive. You can get you anything you want, but get you a good home for your bees and something that you can have them set up in whenever you go to catching swarms, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, with the hive, you also need to have frames. Now, this is a Lands frame, and basically it fits pretty much the whole distance of the horizontal hive from top to bottom. And frames you need to have on the inside of your hive because you need something for your bees to build comb on that you can basically go in, and if you need to remove frames, if you want to extract honey or anything like that, you can do so by pulling out frames. So frames are essential. You need to have frames. And you could have a hive where you caught a swarm in that didn't have frames, but you basically wouldn't be able to do anything to those bees. They would fill up the entire cavity on the inside with comb, and you basically wouldn't be able to work the bees. So if you want to be able to work your bees in any way or form, then you need to get you some frames like this, and just make sure your frames are matching the hive system you have. This is a Lands hive, and so it uses Lands frames. And if you use a Langstroth hive, you need to get Langstroth frames. So that's just one thing you need to look out for. But get you some good frames. And, you know, when it comes to the Lands hive, you know, this hive itself can hold 14 frames. So whereas you'll only winter them on 7 frames, you are basically going to fill the entire thing up with about 14 frames if you're trying to collect honey. So you want to make sure you have a good 14 frames that you can use if you're using a Lands hive. And then I think a Langstroth uses like 10 frames or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I haven't used them in a while, but yeah, they use about that much. And yeah, so this is basically how the Lands hive works. You got your frames, you got your hive, and yeah, I'm very happy with the Lands hive. I've used it for 5 years now, and I'm not going to use anything else. It's nice and easy to use, and I really do enjoy it. So that about goes for the hive system. Now, a big question some of you are probably asking is, well, Wes, how do we get bees? How do we get bees? And of course, the easy way to get bees is to catch swarms. Now, I have a nice swarm hive right here. And if this is a Lands hive, then you can guess that this is a Lands swarm hive. So this is a Lands swarm hive. Now, what is the purpose of a swarm hive? The purpose of a swarm hive is to catch swarms. Now, what we do when we go and catch swarms, and we're going to talk more about that here in a little bit, but we basically place this hive somewhere in a tree, and we get it nice and level, and we bait it, and we get it good to go, and then we basically set it in a tree, and then we wait for bees to move in, preferably during the swarm season. Now, it doesn't get too much more complicated than that, but the swarms, they're really nice because swarms are the healthiest bees you can get. If you catch bees in your local area, you are catching bees that are acclimated to your climate, and they're used to your weather, your wind, your temperatures. They're used to all your stuff in your local area. That's why local bees are the best bees to get. So you get you a nice swarm hive like this, and you basically put it up in a tree, and you catch the bees. Now, it goes without saying, if you are using a Lands hive, you need to use a Lands swarm hive. And the reason why is because this thing takes the same frames that the Lands hive takes. And when we go to transfer bees from this swarm hive, once we catch them, when we transfer them from this box to this box, we need to be using the same frames. So if you're using a Lands main hive, you need to be using a Lands swarm hive. And the same thing goes for if you're using a Langstroth hive to keep the bees in, you need to get you a box that has Langstroth frames that you can carry over to the Langstroth hive. So you want the swarm hive to match your main hive so you can transfer the frames over, and you basically get the bees that way. And it really is as simple as that. We're going to talk about catching swarms a lot more here in a little bit, but I just want to tell you that, you know, the essentials you need going forward is of course, you need your main hive, but you also need something to catch bees in. And that's why you got to get you a nice, beautiful swarm hive like this. And, you know, they're not too hard to get. I mean, you can order them online, or you can build them yourself. You can go to horizontalhive.com, and there Dr. Leo has free plans for all his main hives and swarm hives. So if you've got a shop, you can build one yourself. And that's what we did. We basically built these from scratch, but we used his plans to do so. And so, yeah, so these swarm hives are really good. And yeah, if you're going to be keeping bees sustainably, you need to catch your own swarms. And so you need to get you a nice swarm hive like this to catch bees in, and you'll be very happy. Now, the only thing I want to talk about, or the last thing I want to talk about before we go any further, is you need, of course, if you want to collect honey in October, you need a way to extract your honey. Now, I don't have it on me right now, but if you go to any of our videos in October of every year, you'll see us do our honey extraction video, and you'll see us use our honey press. And that is what we use to press honey. I really enjoy it. It works really well. And you can get that also from horizontalhive.com. You can get that honey press, and it's a really nice honey press, and we use it to press all of our honey. But go to any of our videos in October, and you can see those videos. And so that works good. And these are basically the essentials that you need. Okay, this is what you need to be successful, and you don't need a whole lot more. This is basically it. This is the primary stuff that you're going to be using. Now, the stuff you don't need, and that you will see a lot of literature out there say, and videos say, is you don't need treatments for your bees. You don't need dietary formulas. There's all kinds of formulas that people feed to their bees to make them healthier or something, or they think anyway. You don't need sugar, okay? You don't need sugar feeders or anything like that. You don't need anything to feed your bees or medicate your bees or anything like that, because believe it or not, honeybees are very sustainable. They can survive on their own. They don't need human interaction. And a lot of that stuff was made popular by commercial beekeepers where, you know, they don't treat their bees the best. And because of that, they have to do a million different things to try to keep their bees alive. And a lot of hobbyist beekeepers saw those methods and basically said, well, let's do that too. But it's not necessary, okay? You don't need all that formula and junk. You don't need the treatments. You don't need the sugar water. You know, you don't need the feeders. You don't need any of that stuff. And you don't need any excessive tools. The things we have just listed are the things that you need, and they are going to give you the best chance to success, and they are the stuff that's essential. So I wouldn't tell you to go buy a bunch of other junk because it's just not necessary, okay? I'm being completely honest with you. The stuff I just listed for you is the stuff that we use, and it works every time, and it'll get you on the right track. So the next step in our premier guide is catch honeybee swarms. Now, if there is one step that I would tell you is vitally important for you to be a sustainable beekeeper, it will fall on your ability to catch swarms. Now, if you don't know, honeybee swarms are when a colony of honeybees will reproduce on a colony level. So what I mean by that is the colony will basically split, and half the bees will go search for a new home and establish somewhere else. And that is what swarming is. And what we can do as beekeepers is we can actually catch swarms. And we can catch them in beautiful swarm hives just like this. Now, why catch honeybee swarms? I mean, there are honeybees for sale in packages and nucleus hives and boxes and things. We could basically go to the store and buy a box of bees and be done with that. Well, swarms are very important because they are adapted to your climate. Remember, swarms come from your local area. They come from around your area. So they are adapted to your climate, and they are generally pretty healthy bees. So that makes swarms the best bees we can find. And if we're going to keep bees and we want to be successful, we really need to try our best to catch swarms. And catching swarms is not very difficult. Basically, there is a swarm season every year, and during that season, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks is when honeybees will swarm very often. They will have lots of swarms, and swarms will be all over the place. And if we set swarm hives like this outside and have them up during that period, then we have a really good chance of landing some honeybees. Now, what you need to do in our guide, if you're trying to become a beekeeper, is you need to learn about your swarm season. You need to talk to beekeepers in your area and find out when your swarm season is and when you can expect to find swarms. You know, usually in the warmer climates, it happens earlier in the season, and the colder climates, it happens later in the season. But you need to find out when your swarm season is, so then you can go out and then you can basically put a box out like this. Now, it's not just as easy as putting a box up in a tree. There is baiting the box. And basically what we use is lemongrass essential oil, and we use it in a little tube basically that slow releases it, or you could use it in a Ziploc bag with some paper towel. You can dampen it a little bit and put it on the inside of a Ziploc bag, poke a hole in it, and then that is a really good attractant for bees. We use propolis. Remember I told you what propolis is, this tree resin that bees collect, and you can rub it on the inside of a swarm hive and make it smell like a beehive. And then of course it's always good to put comb on the inside of your swarm hive. If bees can find a place where they've already got room to start building real estate on, then they are a lot more likely to move in, and they will much more enjoy that swarm hive, and they will get moved in. So you get your swarm hive up in a tree. You want to get it level. Don't forget to level that swarm hive. Do not forget, because if you don't level it, then basically they will build their comb in accordance with gravity, and it will be offset, and you can get cross comb over your frames. So when you put these things up in a tree, make sure it's level. And then basically you sit and wait. And you wait and you wait and you wait until you could start seeing activity of bees coming in and out of your swarm hive. And if you see them coming in and out and they stay there for a few days and it's a lot of traffic coming in and out, then you're pretty sure you've landed a swarm of bees. And there you go. You just got bees. You just saved $200, because if you were to buy a colony of bees, it would cost you about $200. So you just saved a bunch of money because you just landed you a nice, beautiful swarm, and they're going to be good to go. And then basically what you do is you let them sit on the inside of the swarm hive and build comb on the frames you have on the inside. And then basically you let them sit, usually we let them sit for 3 to 4 weeks. And then basically once they've done that and they've built comb for about 3 to 4 weeks, you take them down and you basically move one frame at a time into the main hive that you want them to stay at. Now, one thing I want to point out, whenever we have swarm hives like this and we want to move them into a colony, we always put the main hive within 30 feet of where we caught the bees. And the reason why is if you were to take that colony down and let's say you were to move them a mile down the road, the bees are going to know the area because they've been collecting in this area. They've been collecting nectar and pollen, so they know the area. And what they will do is they will get confused and they will return to the old tree where you caught them at. And that can be an issue. You can lose a lot of bees that way. It's a lot easier to just put a main hive basically where you caught the bees, and then they do a lot better that way. So you wait 3 or 4 weeks, you get them into a main hive, and then there you go. You've got your bees and you're good to go. And that is the way to go. One thing I would highly recommend, if you want to learn about catching swarms and baiting hives and all that stuff, check out our guide, or our playlist, the Swarm Catcher's Guide. And in that playlist, we have all kinds of information about catching bees. You can learn about how to bait the hives. You can learn about the good locations to put them. You can watch us take the bees out and put them in a main hive. It's got all the information you could ever need. So check out our playlist, the Swarm Catcher's Guide, and that'll teach you everything to do about catching swarms and all the information you need. And what I want to talk about too is, the easy thing to do is, of course, is to go and buy like packages of bees or nucleus hives, which a package of bees is just a ball of bees in a box, but a nucleus hive is like frames of bees. But again, you have to remember those bees are not acclimated to your climate. And if you move them from a far, like a lot of those packages of bees, they come from a few states away. And if you move them to your climate, they're not going to be used to your weather. They're not going to be used to your rainfall or your temperature or anything like that. So you're much better off catching swarms. And I know some of you might say, well, Wes, I've tried catching swarms and I just can't catch swarms. Well, I can promise you, if bees can exist in your area, then swarms are going to be there, okay? They might be, kind of rare in some cases, but if that's the case, I would tell you put out more swarm hives. The more you put out, if you put 20 of those things out over a very spread out area, you've got a really good chance of catching bees. If you only put one out there, then it's going to be kind of hard for you. And what I also like to tell people is, if you're trying to catch, let's say you're trying to catch 10 colonies, then usually I would put out about 20 swarm hives out, because they have about a 50% chance of catching, I would say. So I generally like to double the swarm hives of the colonies that I'm trying to obtain. So yeah, so that's catching swarms. It's really easy. Again, this is an essential part of sustainable beekeeping, because swarms are the healthiest bees you're going to get, and catching swarms is not difficult. You just got to put a little effort into it, and it can be a lot of fun. So our final step in our premier guide is maintain your apiary, okay? Now what I mean by this is, how are we acting when we finally got some bees? We've moved them over to a main hive like this, and what is our process throughout the year? Well, part of being a sustainable beekeeper is, of course, being hands-off and letting the bees kind of run their lives how they're going to run. So whereas a lot of beekeepers out there, they will teach that you need to be going into these hives every other week or every week sometimes. You need to be looking at your bees, you need to be disturbing them all the time, and you need to be dictating their lives and what they're doing and what they eat and all that stuff. Our method of beekeeping basically says we're going to let the bees make most of the decisions. and we're going to let them do what they need to do. Now, one thing we want to talk about is, of course, you know, how often we're going and actually interacting with our bees. Now, as part of what Lazoutin teaches in his book, Keeping Bees with a Smile, which was that first book I showed you, he would always say that he would go into his hives and inspect them once a year, but even he thought that was one time too many, because he knew that honeybees do a lot better when they don't have humans interfering with them all the time. I don't care who you are, who you think you are, your honeybees want to have nothing to do with you. They don't want you to interact with them. They don't want you to mess with them. That you are an interference. You're not their friend. You're not any of that. They don't want you being in their lives. They want you to stay away. And so the more we can stay away from them and kind of let them do their thing, the healthier they will be and the better off they will be. Now, one thing we do want to talk about is, of course, like, when do we need to go into the hive? Now, of course, we have the spring, which in the spring, I would tell you the most important thing you can do for your hives is get them ready for honey production. So in the spring, you basically go and add all your honey frames and add them to your hives. And this is the frames in excess of the frames they wintered on. Remember, I said they winter on about 7 frames, and that's what they stay in the hive with. But all the frames in excess of that will be added so you can collect honey. So you will add your honey frames. Now, during this time, if you want to do what's called a spring inspection, and you want to look at your bees and learn some knowledge about them, then you can. This is when you can take the frames out, and you can check out their brood, see how they're doing, maybe clean up a few things. You know, you can do all that stuff, and you can interact with your bees that way. Now, if you just caught you a nice swarm, this is not necessary, because as you're moving the swarm from the swarm hive into the main hive, you are looking at those frames and inspecting the bees and checking them out. And so you're getting a good view of them. And so doing a spring inspection in the same year that you actually catch a swarm is not necessary. But going forward in the future years ahead, if you want to learn more about your bees and do a spring inspection, by all means do it. Now, if you don't want to, don't feel obligated to. We don't do a lot of spring inspections on a lot of our bees. We kind of just let them do their thing. And then we just add honey frames on the end of them. And that's all we do in the spring. So for most hives in the spring, we just add our frames for them to build honey on. And then it is as simple as that. And we don't, do a bunch of inspections. We don't do a lot of that stuff. So if you want to do a spring inspection, do it. But if not, don't feel obligated to. And the bees will be fine. But just make sure, if you want to collect honey, that this is when you're adding honey frames to the hive, because in the spring, that's when they're about to hit their honey flow, where they start generating a bunch of honey. So you want to make sure you get that done. And yeah, but a lot of beekeepers out there, they teach you need to be going to those hives once a week and just, oh, hello bees, hello bees, hello bees. And I'm telling you, the bees want to have nothing to do with that. They don't want to be interfered with. They want you to leave them alone. So the less you can interact with them, the better they are. Now, for the rest of the season, we're basically not doing anything. We're basically watching them. We're catching a few more swarms here and there and moving them to a hive, and we're doing all that, but we're not interacting with our bees that are sitting in our hives. We're just letting them do what they're going to do. And then in the fall, basically, we go in the hives, we extract the honey frames that they were building on, and we take out the honey frames. And then this is also when we winterize the hive. So let's say you've got a Lands hive such as this, and you've got 14 frames in there, and you've got your honey frames in there and whatnot. You would take out 7 frames, which are your honey frames, and you would leave their primary 7 frames in there. And what I mean by the primary 7 frames is the frames they've got brood on and they've got all the bees on for the most part. Those are the frames you want to keep inside the hive, and you want to keep them on 7 frames in a Lands hive for the wintertime. That's about as much honey as they need going into the winter. So you winterize the hive, you take out the honey frames, you'll have empty space on the inside of the hive, which you'll divide with a divider board from your bees in the main area, and then the empty space, you'll put a divider board, and then you'll put something like straw on the inside of the empty space so you don't have a bunch of empty cold air on the inside. You don't want a bunch of cold air just sitting on the inside of the hive, because it makes it harder for them to keep warm. So, you know, if you've got space on the inside of the hive that's not being inhabited by bees, you want to fill that with straw, and then they'll be good to go. So you fill them with straw. You can put straw on top of the frames, which is a good idea. You generally want to put straw on top of the frames so it insulates them better. And then basically you close them up, you're good to go. And, you know, going forward, you're probably saying, well, maybe I need to check on them in the wintertime and stuff like that. No, you don't. You need to stay away from those bees. Don't bug them in the wintertime. Let them do what they're going to do. The only thing I would tell you is maybe you can check on them if you have like a 65, 70 degree day and you don't see any bees coming in or out, and that's during the wintertime. Like all of our hives today, it's about 60, 65 degrees out right now, and all of our hives have bees coming in and out, and that's a good sign that shows they're still doing well. But that's the only indication you need. You don't need to open them up and check them out, because if you do, you're exposing them to cold air. So leave them alone. Don't mess with them until the spring, and they'll be fine. And in the spring, you start over again. If you want to do a spring inspection, do it. Add your honey frames, bada bing, bada boom. And it's really as simple as that. And this is how we maintain our apiary. And we're just telling you the essential things. You know, you don't, again, please don't go and mess with your bees every other week or every week or so, because it's just not necessary. They don't need you to go in there, and you're not learning anything. And then a lot can be told also by the activity coming on the in and out of your beehive. So if you've got a lot of bees coming in and out and they've got pollen, if you watch them and they got pollen going in, then that's a good sign that they're doing good. You don't need to go inside and look at the bees to tell if they're doing okay or not. And a lot of people will say, well, I need to see my queen, and I need to see my queen. You don't need to see your queen. She's most likely in there and she's doing just fine. And if you did do a spring inspection, if you just see the brood on the frames, then you know your queen's in there. You don't need to sit there and take an hour while you're inspecting to look for the queen. As long as you see brood on the inside, then you know she's doing okay and you know she's doing fine. So, you know, part of being a beekeeper is not disturbing your bees as much and not freaking out, and just kind of letting them do their thing. And it's a lot easier that way. Trust me, you can work your butt off in beekeeping. Like, you can really work hard in beekeeping if you want to, but I prefer not to. I like to take it easy. You know, I'd much rather drink a nice beer and just watch my bees and just let them do their thing. And, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and go crazy and doing a bunch of extra steps that just aren't necessary. So make sure you're not doing a bunch of unnecessary stuff, and that makes maintaining your apiary a lot easier. So there you have it. That about wraps up our premier guide to getting started in beekeeping. Today we have given you all the essentials you need to be successful. Now, a lot of knowledge you can gain by watching this video, and of course going and checking out our previous videos, but a lot of it comes from experience too. A lot of it's going to take you a year or two to kind of get used to things, to get used to handling bees. And maybe if you have a phobia of getting stung, it might take you a little while to get over that. But beekeeping is very rewarding. It doesn't have to be overly difficult. It doesn't have to be challenging. It doesn't require a ton of work. You know, it can be a lot of fun, and we have really enjoyed it. And I would tell you, check out a lot of our other videos. We have learned so much in this 5 years we've been keeping bees sustainably, and we've learned what works, we've learned what doesn't work, and it has been a lot of fun. And we've come from an interesting history, because back from 2012 to 2017, we kept bees the traditional way. We listened to all the big experts out there and all the big YouTubers and all the big people out there, and they set us up for failure. I'm gonna tell you that right now. We were losing bees like the wind blows. Like every single year, all of our bees were dying. And it wasn't like we were surviving with 50% or whatever. We were losing all of our bees every year. And we gave up beekeeping until 2019, when we found natural beekeeping as taught by Lazuten. And we found that you can keep bees sustainably. It can be a lot of fun, and we really love it. So final thoughts I want to talk about is, again, I know I mentioned it earlier, but please try to keep bees without disturbing them so much. If you can go without disturbing them so much, they will be a lot less stressed and they will do a lot better. So just, I would tell you, keep away from just bugging them as much as you can and just letting them do their things. Stay away from stuff like treatments, sugar feed, you know, dietary formulas, feeders, all that stuff. Stay away from that stuff. You don't need it. You know, I would say if you are going to feed your bees something, just feed them some honey from another hive or something like that. We used to do that. We don't do it anymore, but that's something you can do. But stay away from just messing with the bees all the time like that. And, you know, just have fun with it. You know, if you're going to keep bees, have fun. If you're not having fun, you're doing it the wrong way. Because the way we keep bees is we're having a blast doing it. We're not stressing out over it, and we're having fun. And if you're having fun keeping bees, then you're doing it the right way. If you're feeling like you've got too much on your plate and it's just too much for you to handle, then you're probably doing stuff a little excessive. So, you know, have fun with it. And, you know, just really try to enjoy it. And, you know, I think beekeeping, if it's done the correct way, it is much more enjoyable and it's a lot more fun. And I truly do enjoy beekeeping now. I really do. It's the primary thing that I like to do now. I like to talk about it. I like to teach other people about it. And yeah, it's a lot more fun. So just make sure you're having fun with it. And if you're not having fun, if you're really just miserable, then maybe you need to look and see what you're doing and seeing if what you're doing is excessive. So that about wraps up our video. Again, get started on keeping bees if you're not doing it. Anybody can keep bees. Anybody can do it. Don't think you can't do it. It's possible for anybody. You just got to keep it sustainably, have fun with it, and you'll really enjoy it. That about wraps up our video, and until next time, we'll see you soon.